Hey, everybody. Welcome to a right angle lightning round brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. I'm Steve Green, of course, with the lovely Scott Otta and Bill Whittle by my sides. Yeah, by my sides. I'm in the center square today. I'm Paul Lind. In case you're unfamiliar with the lightning round, instead of going deep into one story that we've kind of hashed out in advance, I've got secret headlines. I'm going to hit Bill and Scott with stories they don't know about and get their hottest possible, freshest possible takes. You can smell the excitement, can't you? No, that's just the coffee I had right before the show. Indeed, you can. So without further ado, Bill, we're going to start with you. Dianne Feinstein, remember she of the Chinese spy driver? Yes, your California senator. She just accepted a Lifetime Achievement Award from a Bush Scions CCP-backed group. The George H.W. Bush Foundation for U.S.-China Relations honored Feinstein for her commitment to, and I quote, a robust and mutually beneficial U.S.-China relationship. Would you care to dissect that phrase, mutually beneficial, for us?
Well, it turns out I've been living in California pretty much the entire time she was a senator. And I've seen China become richer and more powerful, and California become poorer and more pitiful. So I think Dianne Feinstein's amazing work has benefited one side of this transaction extremely well. But I don't think it's the part that she was actually elected to serve. And let's not forget, it was Dianne Feinstein was the person who brought China. Went after China real hard and basically opened up all of the Silicon Valley tech secrets and all the rest of it. And I'm glad she got the award. I'm sure she's gotten a check. And you just colored me surprised, Steve.
I don't
like hearing George H.W. Bush's name on that. However, that was a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, former CIA chief, and his organization is up to this kind of thing. It's just a damn shame. Bill, I've got one of those 64 Crayola boxes, and not one of those crayons says Bill's shocked face on it.
No, they're all just stubs and nubbins.
Yeah, I don't know what to do about that. Scott, let's go to you. This is a two-parter. I just want to preface this by saying I didn't support NATO expansion before. I don't support NATO expansion now. In fact, after the Soviet Union fell, I think NATO should have thrown itself one hell of a victory party, the kind where half the people get liver poisoning and then disbanded themselves the next day. That said, President Biden says Ukraine must root out corruption before they'll be allowed to join NATO. But let's flash back to 2016, when Joe Biden's decision to pressure Ukraine into firing its top prosecutor to derail a corruption investigation. Which Joe Biden are we supposed to believe, Scott?
I think it's comical that any political entity has to prove that it's rooted out corruption to join any other political entity. Isn't that pretty much the definition of a political entity, whether that's a government or an intergovernmental organization? It's like, if you didn't have the corruption, what would hold it together? I think we rely upon this kind of crony network of people scratching each other's backs to keep these things functioning. It's always hard to tell what's actually going on inside of anything, and the news coverage we get is so shallow. In fact, most of the time we're just being spoon-fed information from interested parties and expected to accept it as gospel. But if you look at the role of countries in NATO and then say Ukraine can't be part of this because they're so corrupt, I think that's just like a setup and a punchline at some sort of international comedy club.
The problem is none of the comics are funny. They're all a bunch of Joe Bidens. We had a funny president once. Oh, well. Bill. Oh, I like this one. Missouri just passed a law to block enforcement of federal gun control laws that violate Second Amendment rights as Joe Biden pursues anti-gun agenda. And my headline, or my question for you, Bill, isn't just really about the actual story. My question is this. Isn't it more fun to be a part of a genuine resistance than it is to be a part of the evil empire?
Yes. Missouri is a landlocked state, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
It's amazing how a state that size with no borders connecting to either the Gulf or either of the oceans could have so many boating accidents and lose so many firearms in such a short period of time. But nevertheless, these things happen, I suppose. No, exactly right. And this is why, and this is the strength of the federalist system, which, of course, as Scott has pointed out and everybody's pointed out, the people this idea of federalism is the idea that the federal government is actually not very strong. It's the idea that the states retain a great deal of power and so on. So if some yahoo in Washington decides to say something that's unconstitutional, he just didn't like that part of the oath. So, all right, the states then become firewalls. And that's exactly what they were designed to be. And that's why the states elect the president and not the people, because the states have their own vested interest and used to have enough power to be able to offset the federal government because the Senate was the House of the states. That's what the Senate was. When they went to popular election of the Senate, 17th Amendment, I want to say?
The 17th, yeah.
So they basically just turned it into a House of Lords. But the Senate was designed to send two people there who were not representing the people of Missouri. They were representing the state of Missouri. That's what their job was. And so anytime I hear anything like this, whenever I hear something, DeSantis in Florida or something says we're going after Facebook for their censorship or whatever, I just think, thank God for that. And here's the thing about this Constitution. It's never failed us, ever. The only time things go wrong here is when we just plain don't pay attention or we actively, openly go against what's written down as law. But I have yet to find a fault in that document. And as all of the stuff gets eroded away, you find that the foundational stuff is sometimes all that's left. And this idea that the states still have power is probably the single greatest protection we have remaining.
Indeed. Scott, let's go to you. And this is where I want your street level view here. The AP reports that U.S. retail sales fell 1.3% in May as Americans bought fewer cars, furniture, and electronics. Also, wholesale prices, boosted by rising food costs, increased almost 1% in May and are up by a record amount over the last year. Scott, you're in retail when you're not doing this with us. You're at the pointy end of the stick. What's your view? I know Texas is doing better than a lot of the rest of the country, but what do you see on the ground?
It has been a great boon to businesses of household goods, furniture, for example, in the past year, that people weren't going out to eat at restaurants or taking trips to Disney or taking trips anywhere for that matter. And as a result of that, with them stuck in or near their homes for much of the time, not only did they become aware of how repulsive their internal...
We got rid of a sofa last year. Oh, dear God. I can't believe we were sitting on that thing.
So it's amazing when you're with that sofa all day long, every day, and you start to realize what it really is. But
the undercoating goes a long way if you're going to hold on to your sofa for a while.
What was that?
I said, if you're going to keep a sofa for a while, you really should get the undercoating.
That's right, and the bed liner. But anyway, once you spend a great deal of time with your furniture, then you start to realize maybe I need some new furniture. And furniture is one of those things where people usually hold it until long after they should have replaced it. This just kind of accelerated that cycle. But they had the money in many cases because they weren't doing anything else. And so what that article that you talked about with the consumer spending going down a little bit had to do, when it comes to durable goods, has to do with the fact that people are now going back and living their lives the way they used to, and they're, wasting money on restaurants and travel and stuff like that when they could be purchasing beautiful, durable, comfortable furniture that would last a long, long time. So yeah, we from a retail perspective, we're continuing to see high demand, challenges with inventory, still difficulty getting supplies, not only from overseas suppliers, but from the huge number of US-based manufacturers in this industry. So I don't know when that's going to start to let up. It's certainly, the traffic isn't like it was last year when I described it as every weekday is like a weekend and every weekend is like a holiday.
Wow. That must have been very nice. Good.
It was if you could get the stuff delivered.
Oh, yes, of course. Because so much of that stuff comes from overseas, and oh yeah.
But even
a
Steve,
hassle
the
that
U.S. factories were having a hard time functioning, not only because of difficulty getting parts from overseas, for example, but because there were a lot of people who work in factories who were in effect being subsidized to stay home rather than go and do very difficult work for rather modest wages. And so there was like this whole constellation of factors that made it more difficult to get what I sell at the very time when there were more people wanting to buy what I sell than ever before in history.
Ugh. It's always complicated. Last headline is for me. North Korean defector says even North Korea was not this nuts after she attended an Ivy League school with all the peer pressure and self-censorship and political correctness.
Oh, God.
And I can tell you why. We are still in the true believer stage. And I don't mean the three of us. I don't mean you, our viewing audience. I'm talking about the woke American left. You know, by the time you get to about the third generation of a communist country, nobody believes in communism anymore because they've been living it. They know it doesn't work. They know it's awful. The sons and grandkids of the original generation of Soviet leaders, they joined the party because that's how you got ahead. It was like getting your first job at your dad's country club. They didn't believe in any of that communist stuff. And that's why when the Soviet Union fell apart, they're like, okay, let's go make some money. We got all the connections. Same thing in China. I think it was Deng who said to get rich is glorious. That's not communism. And he knew it, but he'd been around a while. And in North Korea, again, same story. They've been communist since the late 1940s. Nobody over there believes in communism anymore. You go to an American university, you will find more genuine believers in Marxism at the average American university than you will in the capital of every existing communist country in the world. You add Beijing with, 20 million people, there's like 4 actual communists there. That's it. You go to your university down the street, nothing but. Sorry. It's gonna get ugly because the true believers, man, they're dangerous. So keep your powder dry. And as Heinlein said, keep a lot of powder. And that's your right angle lightning round brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for your support. And we'll see you next time.